Welcome to another in our series of historical material prepared to talk about the history of Proctors Theater, sponsored by the Proctors History Committee. I'm Karen Johnson. Today is July 21st, 2017, and we're very pleased today to have with us Maggie Mancinelli-Cahill, who is the producing artistic director of Capitol Repertory Theater. It's kind of long.
It is, but you did that very well, thank you.
So we're delighted to have you because Capitol Rep is now part of Proctor's family. And Maggie, you've been at Cap Rep long enough. You could tell me a little bit about the earlier days of Cap Rep and some of the motivations for forming it.
Well, well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I think one of the best things that ever happened to Capitol Rep is that we became a member of the Proctors family. So I'm really happy to talk about the history, the good, bad, and the ugly that brings us to this moment and will bring us into what I think will be an incredible future. Capitol Rep started 37 years ago, and believe it or not, I was not there when it happened. And it came into being because there was a group of business people who were very, very dedicated theater goers. And they had gone over to a place called Arts Awareness and seen a theater company called the League of Theater Artists. Mm-hmm. And the League of Theater Artists was a group of people that was made up of directors and actors from New York who would come to this arts colony and create theater in the summer. And the business people of Albany went down there, they saw them, and they said, why don't you come to Albany and start a professional theater for us? That was really the germ that started Capitol Rep. These guys who started it, these business guys, were unbelievable though. They incorporated business, government, and all their contacts that they had, in the community and in New York to make a LORT theater happen in downtown Albany. Now, a LORT theater is a theater that is a professional theater that's a member of the League of Resident Theaters. It means that the people who work in that theater live in the community and they make the work for the community in which that theater it resides. And so these business guys got together, they got the city of Albany to identify a place for the theater. They got 300 volunteers together and they built Capitol Rep in the Cash Market, where we still are to this day. After a few renovations have happened, down the road, certainly, but that is how the company started. And it's really kind of a remarkable beginning for a small city like Albany to sprout a LORT professional theater on a street in downtown.
Very unusual, knowing what you know about LORT theaters.
Very unusual in that, it's hard to get into LORT. Usually takes a few years. You have to have a history of financial stability. You have to have a proven record of productions. You have to be able to pay people at a certain level. These business guys went right to the top. They said, no, we want to start in LORT. And they petitioned for it, and they were very committed, and they put their money behind their dreams, and Capitol Rep was founded.
Now, is the theater that we go to today still pretty much the same theater that there was when they opened that from the Grand Cash Market?
Well, it's been, as I said, it's been renovated a couple of times, but the two columns in the theater are still the same ones that were there when the theater was founded. It looks a lot different. The lobby looks a lot different. The support areas look different. And the theater seats have all been replaced, and the stage has been actually expanded twice from what it was originally. So there's been a steady stream of improvements, but pretty much it was always what's called a 3/4 thrust stage. That means the audience sits on three sides of it. And it always was between about 250 and 300 seats.
And when did you show up on the scene?
Well, I showed up. I showed up on the scene in 1995. The founding artistic director, Bruce Bouchard, was leaving, and they wanted to find a new artistic director. So I was living in New York. I had lived in New York for 11 years after graduating from Columbia University, and I had been working at various theaters in New York, and I saw this job. And the reason I ended up at Capitol Rep is because when I graduated from Columbia, I got a fellowship in directing, and it sent me to two theaters, one in New York City called Ensemble Studio Theater, and the other was a regional theater called Capitol Repertory Theater. And I came and did an internship in dramaturgy at Capitol Rep, and I fell in love with the area and actually met my future husband here. So I always tell people Albany is a really good place to meet, you know, your mate.
This is all going in your novel.
Yes, it's all going in my novel. That's
or
right.
let's say maybe you'd write a play.
Right. So when that job came up, I knew Capitol Rep had a struggle financially. I also knew that I really liked the area, and I loved the people, and I really understood that there was this amazing, dedicated core audience that wanted Capitol Rep to succeed. And that's what I talked about. I remember this very distinctly when I interviewed for the job.
So just talk about some of your goals when you came.
Keep the doors open.
Very good.
Find a plan, you know, to pay down some of the debt. But also, I felt like the theater needed a reconnection with the community. From the very beginning of Capitol Rep, the mission always had the word community in it and a connection to community. From the very beginning, those 37 years ago, this was very important. And when those 300 volunteers and the people from the city got together and built Capitol Rep with volunteer labor, that really, for me, paved the way for us to have a very strong mission that involved all the people of the Capital Region. And so therefore I felt like the mission needed to be, you know, revitalized, and I thought that it needed to have more scope in programming so that we could do more outreach to more people. I really believe that Capitol Rep is a theater for everyone. So diversity is important to us, scope of work is important, reaching young audiences is important, and I felt that all of those things needed to be charged up. They had always been a very important part of the theater, and I looked at the past production history at Capitol Rep and was very proud of it, but I felt like it needed more expansion, and so that's what I worked on as soon as I got here.
So now, from then and today, how do you select the plays you're going to produce?
Well, that's probably a bigger question than I can answer sitting here, but let me put it this way. I think that when we're looking at the 6 plays that we're going to create for the community and the 3 touring plays that we do for youth, we look at everything in terms of who will it appeal to? Can we afford to do it? Do we have enough housing? Will it appeal to our subscribers? Will it appeal to new people? Does it have something to say? Is it pure fluff? How can we create an eclectic mix of things that really speak to, inform, and delight our audience members? And since we've come together with Proctors, you know, we've been able to expand our repertoire a little bit more. Certainly in our education programs and in those productions, we've added 3 shows to that lexicon. And once a show goes into that pool of work, we revive them over and over again for thousands of school kids, over the decades.
So what is the extent of your school program? How big is it? How does it work?
our school programs are comprehensive, and actually, I think it's important, because this is history, that I say that from the moment I met Philip Morris, the thing that we really had in common was our belief in arts education. Long before we were affiliated as organizations, it was really our education work where we looked at each other and went, there's something about you I really like.
Right.
And I think it's because we shared this vision of how important the arts are to educating the citizens of tomorrow. You know, that by exposing a child to the arts and helping them to develop their critical thinking skills and their love for something outside themselves that helps them understand the world and other people better, there's nothing like the arts. And Philip has that belief, and I do too. And it's something that has cemented us from the very beginning. So since 1995, I think it was actually, that's not true. I started looking at education programs, and by the way, when I say I, that's wrong. It's really we. I had this great staff of people who were so dedicated and so determined that the theater was going to work, you know, and that we could do this expanding of these education programs and the work on our stage in a way that really took a very committed group of people, and we've always had that on our staff. But we had this great education director. Her name was Jill Rafferty, now Jill Rafferty Weinich, and she had an idea. And her idea was that we would take theater to any place that wanted it, and we would create very portable productions that could go anywhere. And that became a program called On the Go. On the Go combines historical pieces and also pieces from literature that go out into classrooms. We've performed everywhere. We performed in cafeterias. We've performed in hallways. We've performed in basements. We don't need lights. We don't need anything except what's contained in the traveling company. And every year we reach between 10 and 15,000 young people in their schools. We've expanded that because one of the programs that we did this year was highly supported by the state of New York's extra funding that supported the bicentennial of the Erie Canal, the building of the Erie Canal, and the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. So we had two shows that very specifically highlighted those. So those two shows have gone out as far as 125 miles in all directions of Albany to go into schools this year with these really exciting, I think, historical stories about New York. So that's our favorite.
So do you go out in vans? I mean, physically,
Yes.
How do you accomplish this?
We do. We go out in vans, and everything is built to be very concise. It sets up within 30 minutes, and we have a sound system that we travel with. We set it up, the kids come in, and we do it. And we can do that in beautiful theaters that some schools have, and as I said, in hallways, classrooms, or other environments where we have managed to do it. Yeah, that are tough. Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, now, when you select a show for the stage for the regular program, what's the process of making that go? I mean, you've picked the play, then what?
Well, okay. It starts about 18 months before you see anything on the stage. When we pick the play, we find out if we can get the rights to do it. We figure out who's going to direct it, who's going to design it, and we go into a series of meetings from that point where we begin to craft what the play is going to look like and who is going to be in it ultimately on our stage. Once we have the design team in place, we then they start crafting a design that is very specific to what you will see in our theater. It won't be like anywhere else. And there will be a series of drawings that are approved by everyone that has to be artistically correct and has to meet the budget and all of those things, and has to fit in our what I'm going to call it is a unique space. We have a lot of nooks and crannies in Capitol Rep because it wasn't built as a theater. It was built as a supermarket that was carved into a theater, so it's unique. And then after this process of these designs are approved, they go into our shops, and we actually have a fully staffed scenery construction shop. We have prop people who get the stage properties and build the other ones that are always on our staff, and they borrow things and they buy things and they build things for each of our shows. We have a fully staffed costume shop as well that takes the costume designs and builds the patterns, and then either shops or builds those costumes. And from there, it's a process of, the actors come in and we rehearse the play, we fit the costumes, we sand all the edges on the scenery, and we open. So we are very labor intense as an industry. Painters use paint. We use people to create our art. So our art is all about the people on our stage, the people who build the scenery, the people who design that scenery, and then the people who make sure that we sell our tickets and all of those kind of things. So it's a very labor-intensive industry, always has been. And I think Philip's always sending a variety of articles, that talk about why theater is expensive, because it's all about people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's very different from Proctors, where most of the time we have a show that comes in a truck, they unload, the staff does the sound and light, and then you go from there. And a lot
Right.
less hands-on stuff about the plays itself or the performance.
Yeah, that's true, and that's changing a little bit. When we talked about when we began our affiliation, we started talking in 2009, and there was a terrible recession, if you remember, since this is a history lesson, we're here. In 2008, the stock market of the United States crashed. And in 2009, 10, and 11, we experienced one of the greatest recessions the country has ever experienced. In that period of time, 18 professional theaters closed their doors fast. 5 of them were in the Northeast. We were really severely hit by the economic downturn. It was then that it seemed to really make sense that we could affiliate with a strong organization in the arts that could help us get through a rough patch. But something else happened, and I haven't forgotten your question about the difference between Proctors and Capitol Rep. But what happened was, when we started talking, we started realizing that together we could really form an incredible performing arts center unlike any other, certainly in the upstate New York area. That we could actually harness the energy of the great presenter, Proctors, and a presenter meaning that the work comes in from somewhere else and we present that work, it stays here for a while, and then it moves on to another city. And a producer of theater, which is, we're a producing company. There's not a good or a bad here. It's just a different model of creating art and providing it to our community. We are providers of art to the community. Capitol Rep can do dramas that will never tour. We can do classics that will not do national tours. So we can begin to augment the programming of Proctors, as well as the programming at Proctors so augments us. Together, though, we become a richly resourceful organization that provides arts to so many people in upstate New York and beyond. So, I guess what I want to say is, yes, we're different, but we're also bound by a shared vision and mission of what the ultimate charge is of the arts, which is delighting, educating, and stimulating thought through the arts, you know. So we share that, and together we're stronger for that. The other part I was going to say, though, is that we've started building things for Proctors, and Proctors has started needing things to be built. And of course, where did that start but in our education programs? So the School for the Performing Arts here now at Proctors has a show that, I think there's 40 kids in this year, that called Pippin. Last year they did a play called All Shook Up. And we now work with the designer of that show, and we build the set in our shop and then deliver it here for Proctors. So we have now become a production arm for some of the things that Proctors wanted to do to be able to expand their vision and certainly their mission as it impacts on education. So it's become a real symbiotic relationship that we have, and I'm very proud of it. It's very unique. There are very few LORTs and presenters that work together in this way in the country, and I think it's great that we've managed to do it.
A national model.
Yes, I do. I think that in many ways we are a national model for something that really worked, and there's no doubt that I don't know if Capital Rep would have survived without it. It would have been very hard for us not to have a powerful collaborator to work with. It was a very hard time for professional theaters.
That's a beautiful benediction to our talk.
Oh,
Kind of bring us to where we are going together.
Right.
And that's great. And so I would like to thank Maggie Mancinelli-Cahill, the producing artistic director of Capitol Repertory Theater, for being with us today on part of our history series. This is Karen Johnson. I hope you've enjoyed the show. This is July 21st, 2017, and thank you for watching.